Good morning, everyone, to Landmarks Marketing Matters. Thank you so much for being with us this beautiful Wednesday morning here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's going to be a little bit different today because I am hosting, and obviously, I'm Cynthia Lujan, not Sarah Touchstone. So, Sarah is taking some well earned vacation time. So, I am jumping in today and hosting with Rosalie and Samantha, both with FIRPTA Solutions. So we all know this, this is something that we all need to sharpen the saw on. It's important content for us to know. And we have partnered with Rosalie and Samantha with FIRPTA Solutions, and who's going to give us all of what we need to know when working with foreign buyers and sellers. So Rosalie, I am going to turn it on over to you to bless us with your knowledge.
Okay, and we're also collecting questions that'll be in the chat,
Thank you.
and Samantha will be answering those at the end. I always like to say Samantha knows more than the IRS when it comes to FIRPTA, so she'll be able to answer some of your questions, but we'll leave those until the end. So let me get my
Thank you.
screen up here and make sure everybody can see it.
We can see it. Good to
Okay,
go.
great. Okay, give me one more second. All right. Well, I always like to start by saying that presenting information about FIRPTA is really challenging because of you folks, the range of experience that some of you have had. Some have had FIRPTA transactions and have done it a number of times and know what to expect, and others have barely heard about it. So we at FIRPTA Solutions were finding that we were fixing more FIRPTA mistakes to keep people out of trouble than starting from scratch. And you know how much easier it is when you do it right from the start. So that's why we decided to design some education courses. And we actually have two education courses. This one is a broad brush, but we also do a presentation that is 2 hours long, and in 9 states you can get CE credits for it. It's really in depth and it gives you total confidence in dealing with FIRPTA situations. So one of my goals is to do that, give you a broad brush concerning the requirements that the government has in place for foreign sellers and buyers of U.S. real estate. And the other is to tell you a little bit more about our company, FIRPTA Solution, and who are experts that are at your fingertips to help support you when you have FIRPTA transactions. So what is FIRPTA and why is it important? Well, as an instructor, I've always tried to simplify the content and get it into a teachable format. But because the government tried to close every loophole when it came to FIRPTA, it gets complicated. And they came up with some pretty quirky ideas to make sure that people stayed in compliance with it. And another thing is foreigners, as you, I'm sure, realize, are coming into the country in record numbers, and many are buying property. So it's important information to know to stay at the forefront of our field. FIRPTA is an acronym. It stands for Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. It started in 1950. And like I mentioned before, it was designed to ensure that foreign owners of U.S. property pay their share of the taxes on their profit or gain when they sell. FIRPTA is a tax, but it's not the kind you may be familiar with. It is actually a withholding. The government asks at closing time to withhold 15% of the selling price, which is a pretty big chunk of change. Withhold that and send it into the IRS where it's safely in their hands until the foreign individual files their taxes. And then when they file their taxes, it's actually calculated on the profit. So there's a very good chance, since there was a 15% withholding, that now when it's done on the actual profit, they may be eligible for a refund. So here it is in summary. So withholding tax, initially it's estimated about 15%. It's temporary because it's set aside for that future tax payment and very possibly refundable. So who is subject to FIRPTA? There are actually two parties subject to FIRPTA, but let's take a look. And I see there are questions coming in the chat, and that's great. The first party is the foreign seller. In fact, the foreign seller is who puts FIRPTA into play. It doesn't matter if the buyer is foreign or not, but if you have a foreign seller, you need to check in to see if FIRPTA is going to apply. Here's the definition. The foreign seller is anyone who is not a U.S. citizen or a resident alien who is selling property in the United States. Now, you know what a citizen is. So the other party that is not subject to FIRPTA is a resident alien. So let's take a look at what a resident alien, who a resident alien is. A foreign individual may not be a U.S. citizen, but can still be considered a resident alien and not subject to FIRPTA. So how do we figure that out? There are two tests to confirm whether a person is a resident alien or not. The first test is an easy one. It's the green card test. They can be considered a resident alien if they have a valid green card issued by the U.S. Immigration Services. So that's easy. If your client has a green card, you don't need to worry about FIRPTA. The next one, not so easy. It's the substantial presence test, and there's some math coming up. So hang in there with me. I'm going to explain it in a nutshell for our purposes here. If the individual has been present in the U.S. for 183 days in the current year plus the 2 years prior, they may pass the substantial presence test. It's a little bit more complicated than that. It's actually, excuse me, 100% of the days in the first year, a third of the days in the year prior, and a sixth of the days in the year before that. And if you have trouble figuring it out, there are Excel little things that you can do, or the easiest thing would be to call us, tell us that you have this individual that's trying to pass the substantial presence test, and we will advise you on whether or not we think they'll qualify and the documents that you need to prove it. But there is one more important stipulation for you to keep in mind. And that is, if they're trying to pass the substantial presence test of being present here in the United States for that 183 days, they must be here 31 days in the current year. Now, what does that have to do with you? Well, if your closing is January 5th, it doesn't matter if they've been here 500 days if they have not been here 31 days yet. So it would behoove you to move your closing into February to make sure that you have adhered to this part of the substantial presence test. One of the things that we do at FIRPTA Solutions is we have them sign, your foreign individuals sign an affidavit of non-foreign status, and it's under the penalty of perjury. Because as you're going to see in a little bit, your buyer has a job too. But this puts it right on the foreign individual. If they're claiming to be non-foreign, then this document puts it on them. Okay. Whoop, there we go. Should you avoid foreign sellers? Well, you might think, I just won't mess with this at all. Well, it's a bad idea for a couple different reasons. There are so many foreign sellers are just more numerous than ever, as I'm sure that you're seeing. And first of all, if you avoid it, you'll be missing out on a very lucrative part of the market because a lot of these transactions are cash transactions. So it's better to understand or at least know where to go for support. And another reason is that you may possibly be blindsided by FIRPTA. If they're working with multiple sellers and one or more of them are foreign, then guess what? FIRPTA applies. A foreign individual, a foreign seller can be an individual, a foreign-owned corporation, some LLCs, and some trusts. And I'm not going into detail here, but trust me, the IRS has each of these entities very well defined. And if you are interested in taking our class, and I'll tell you how you can do that at the end, you'll see that I'll go into detail on all of these, and just understanding them will boost your confidence in FIRPTA transactions. Well, you may say, but I represent the buyer. Well, guess what? The buyer has a crucial role in the FIRPTA transaction. Let's define them first. And once again, the second party that's subject to FIRPTA is the buyer. A buyer is anyone who purchases a property from a non-citizen or a non-resident alien. And it does not matter if the buyer is foreign or not. What puts FIRPTA into play is if the seller is foreign, because remember, it's going to eventually be a tax on the profit. And the buyer certainly isn't making a profit. The buyer is buying, is spending the money. But the next sentence that I'm going to put up here is what makes FIRPTA so confusing. And it puts it right in the lap of the buyer. So if you don't catch this right away, trust me, by the end of this presentation, you'll get it. The buyer must hold back up to 15% of the selling price and submit it to the IRS. Now, did I say the buyer pays the 15%? I did not. What I have here, and I have it underlined, is the buyer submits it to the IRS. This was really brilliant on the part of the IRS, although it, like I said, it makes FIRPTA so confusing. The buyer is responsible for submitting the withholding because the foreign seller may go back to Germany or the Netherlands or wherever they're from without filing their taxes. So the buyer holds back at closing, holds back up to 15% of the selling price, and the buyer sends it in for the seller. So the government put the buyer in charge of this because guess what? If it's not paid, the buyer is either still here or at least has property here. So the government will go back to the buyer and take the property, or tell the buyer that they're the ones that were responsible, now they need to pay it. And they have done that. I mean, this is not an unusual situation where the government goes back to the buyer because the buyer is the withholding agent. The worst case scenario I've heard is, well, of course, confiscating the property is bad enough, but they garnished the wages of the buyer to get the FIRPTA money. Okay, so the buyer definitely has a big responsibility, not paying it, but submitting it, FedExing it, mailing it, whatever, getting it into the IRS. Here are a few more responsibilities of the buyer: to determine if the seller is foreign, to determine how much to withhold. And I'm going to talk about, basically it's 15%, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how it can be a little bit different than 15% in a few minutes. Determine if there are any exceptions. Determine the deadline for submitting the withholding. So remember, the buyer is going to send in the seller's money, and this is important, within 20 days after closing. And that is really important. Okay. Here are some exceptions and exemptions. And these are the most common ones. The first one, I already mentioned it to you, the affidavit of non-foreign status. First, determine if the seller is considered a foreign seller. If they're not, then FIRPTA will not apply. But for your own protection, for the protection of your buyers, you may want them to sign this affidavit of non-foreign status, because once again, it puts it back on the seller. And there's another form, a CPA certification, that does the same thing, only it's even more in depth, okay, in determining whether or not they're foreign. The next one is another common one, and it's the residency exemption. The buyer signs an affidavit, this is a buyer this time, that they plan to reside at the purchased property, and the purchased property is less than $300,000. Now, the buyer must certify that they intend to use the property as their residence for at least 50% of the time that it's occupied during the first 2 years of the sale. And if they will do that, and it's under $300,000, then they're exempt from FIRPTA. If it's under $1 million, it reduces to 10% instead of the 15%. And during the class, I go into this a little bit more, because it's a little bit more than the actual buyer. Like, it could be the buyer's children if they're in college and are going to be residing there and so forth. But I'll go into more detail to that in the class. But you can be sure that the IRS has tried to close every loophole. The next one is a withholding certificate. This must be applied for, and your seller applies for a reduced withholding. Instead of the 15%, it'll be based on the gain of sale instead of the selling price. They have to apply for this early. And to be honest with you, at FIRPTA Solutions, we do not encourage this, because they used to respond within 90 days, and now sometimes it takes over a year. And the seller can actually do their taxes and have their refund before they even get this approval. And there are more. And what I have here is, it's best to work with a trusted advisor to look at some exceptions and see if your client applies. And one of the things that we do at FIRPTA Solutions is take a look at all of this and find out what is the best thing to do for your particular scenario. Well, you know what this is. And I get so behind on my notes here because I do most of this by heart. So, you know what this is. This is the seller's closing document. And if you notice, the seller is not going to get the whole total amount, because 15% is withheld by the buyer. It's withheld. And then the buyer sends that money in with Form 8288, correctly filled out, submitted by the buyer, paid for by the seller, within, I hope you remember how many days, and I hear you all saying 20 days of closing, and you're right, within 20 days of closing. Well, is FIRPTA really a big deal? it is a major deal to the IRS. And let me hop back here, back to this slide before, and tell you a little story that happened to our company. We had a woman who was the buyer, and we had the money all ready to go, and we had the form all filled out except for one part of it, her Social Security number. And she did not want to disclose it because there's a lot of fraud and so forth. And that's true. That is true. But she did not want to disclose it. And we said, we need to get this in within 20 days. It's really important that we get this in on time. And she said she still didn't want to disclose it. And we said, well, this is a government document. It's going into the government. So it's not passing through a third hand or anything like that. She was still hesitant. Well, finally, we told her about the urgency of getting it in, and she sent it in day 21. And she got a bill from the IRS for $2,700 for being 1 day late. So is it a big deal? It is a major deal to the IRS. These are some of the penalties. And notice the buyer is liable to get it sent in, not to pay it, but to get it sent in. The buyer is left holding the bag. If the buyer fails to withhold properly, there's a failure to pay penalty, a failure to file penalty, and interest. And the interest isn't just on the FIRPTA money, it is also on these, it's also on the penalties as well. And I have a story to share with you. And I was talking to a group somewhat like this group. I know that Marketing Matters has this well organized and so forth, but most of our presentations are with people in the audience who all have their faces up there. And a lot of times we talk back and forth. And I was doing this presentation in March, and a realtor named Jennifer said that she had a situation that she wanted to share with us to see if we could help her out at all. It seemed that Jennifer and her title company represented a buyer who purchased a property from a foreign seller, and the seller had his attorney handle FIRPTA, which is fine, just so it gets in there. But this attorney wasn't really familiar with FIRPTA. And, don't be surprised because there are IRS agents that are not familiar with FIRPTA. I kid you not. In fact, we have a group of hard case resolution people in our office, and she called to get some clarification, and the IRS agent that answered the phone had never heard of it. So it's not one of the IRS's priority things, but it is if you don't pay for it. So the problem was that the money was sent in, but it was not sent in a timely manner, which is 20 days beyond closing. And so her client was charged penalties and interest in the amount of $40,000. Now, unfortunately, the buyer has a big, big problem. Now, our hard case resolution people go after the IRS when there's a situation, but a lot of times it's the fault of the IRS. Well, this one wasn't. And they don't care whose fault it is, unless it's theirs, but they don't care whose fault it is. They just know that they didn't get the money and they didn't get it on time. And this is a true story, $40,000. And she asked, could we do anything? Well, I don't know, because it's not a quick fix. And appointments need to be set up and with the IRS. And bottom line is, it's still at the discretion of the IRS at this point. And I'm not telling this to you to scare you, but maybe just as a cautionary tale. What I would do is 1 or 2 days after closing, call or email whoever is in charge of getting the money in, even if it's us, and you can ask for proof proof of that the funds were remitted, 1 or 2 days after closing, see if ask for the FedEx mailing label or a copy of the check, whatever, just to ensure that that money was sent in and sent in on time. Don't wait to day 19. Okay, we have resources to support you, and these are some of our services. We can help you apply for I-10 numbers, tax numbers, which they will need for buying and selling property if they're foreign. Withholding certificates, although we don't really promote those anymore, but we can do them. If you have a savvy client that insists on it, we can help you with that. We can help you to find exceptions to FIRPTA. This is what sets us apart, our education courses, just like this one, to give you a heads up on some of the things that you need to look for and to keep in mind when you're dealing with those pretty lucrative transactions that include foreign sellers. And as I mentioned, that we offer CE credits in 9 states, but we've also had many people take our education courses for the knowledge that comes with it, whether your state is one of those states or not. We can correspond with the IRS. I know sometimes when you try to correspond with the IRS, you don't even know which button to press or how to put together an intelligent question about it, not because of you, but because dealing taxes and dealing with the IRS is just complicated. Our company can file foreign tax returns at the end of the line whenever the seller is ready to apply for the refund to file their taxes. We can do that. In fact, we have people in our office who are just experts at foreign taxes. And we're also aligned with another company that I'll tell you about in a couple minutes that deal with foreign taxes as well. I had mentioned our hard case resolution people that know which buttons to press up here and can help you if you have a problem, and so much more. So, if you're dealing with anything that has to do with foreign clients, don't hesitate to give us or contact us about it, and we'll be glad to help you. And one of the things that we always hear is your people are so kind, they're so knowledgeable, they get back with us, they're really great. And so people really do appreciate that. We have a partnership with Currency Direct, and they make it easy for foreign clients to get their refund. They can help foreign clients set up an account and receive the money in their own currency when it's time for their refund. So that is really an important consideration, because there have been hundreds of thousands of dollars held up just in the transfer. So we can help you with that. Education, here we go. You can receive 2 CE credits if you're from one of these states, if you're a realtor from one of these states. And we also have some title company folks that can get credits as well. But if you are interested in the education part of it, oh, let me tell you one other thing. You also can get a free ebook at the end of the education class. But if you're interested in the education class, go to our website, FIRPTAsolutions.com. There's the education tab, and this is it, FIRPTA 101 Continuing Ed Class. CE credits may be available. Okay, and there's the ebook, but that's not available to you because it's password protected. That's not available until after you take the class. But I do have something for you now, and it's found right here under FIRPTA Tips. But once again, go to FIRPTAsolutions.com, and under FIRPTA Tips, you'll see FIRPTA Need to Know. And this is a PDF. It looks like this. And you can make as many copies as you want. Actually, it's black and white. I asked our people there if they would make it black and white so you wouldn't use all your ink up. But it's a heads up to your sellers and buyers letting them know a little bit about FIRPTA and who's responsible for what. And here's that line I just said: may ask for a copy of the shipping label if they so desire. On our website, we have a number of informational items. There's a blog there about various FIRPTA-related items that goes into a lot of detail. Education is our thing. We really feel that we can help people, and people come to our company because they understand what they don't know, or they understand what they need sometimes. Frequently asked questions are there. Those are all under FIRPTA tips, and there's that paper that I just showed you, need to know. Okay. We also have frequently asked question videos on our YouTube site. We're on YouTube as well. And some people prefer learning in this format, and these videos answer some of your FIRPTA questions in a fun and unique way. I go to YouTube all the time. I swear you can take your own appendix out with YouTube. So but you can certainly answer some of your questions there too. We're on social media as well, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And the nice part about this is we can keep you updated on FIRPTA and FIRPTA solutions and FIRPTA-related issues. So I like to always invite you to bring an expert to your team whenever you're working with FIRPTA-related transactions. And that all said, our phone number is here. Our information email is here. And if you're interested in talking with me directly, it's education@firptasolutions.com. So right now I'd like to turn it back over to Cynthia and Samantha. And
Thank you, Rosalie, so much for your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate the time this morning. We do not have, I'm guessing we have FIRPTA folks that are pretty savvy here, because we do not have questions in the chat. However, Samantha, do you have anything that you would like to add before I move on?
No, I'm all set. I think Rosalie covered it all.
Okay, thank you, ladies, so much again. And thank you, those of you who showed up today. And just know that every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, right here, you will find Marketing Matters. Next week, June 25th, 10 o'clock, we are marketing to investors. And we're talking about how to attract and convert investors with smart content and tools. So please make sure to join us next week and come visit us at any of our 8 offices within Arizona, or come to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media as well. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. And please remember Landmark Title for all your escrow and title needs. Have a great Wednesday today.